Hi, welcome to Write, Learn and Earn. So are you an author? Does it feel like your costs are escalating out of control? You want to maximize profits, but you also want to build a database. With me, I have got Michael Angel, a multi-genre author who I met via the StoryOrigin app, which is a phenomenal way of growing your newsletter database. But when you get to a certain level, that's when a lot of the companies that you run your newsletter through start charging you. And Michael has had so much experience in this area on keeping your costs down to a minimum. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the Write, Learn and Earn channel. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about yourself. You're writing 2 genres. How's that working?
It's working pretty good, even though there's no overlap between them. I started out writing epic fantasy, and I have a 10-book series out, starting with the first book, Centaur of the Crime. I believe you and I have a giveaway going on with that first book, or a magnet going on very soon. I then transitioned to doing a 4-book series at 4 and growing on medical thrillers. The first book in that one is going to be The Devil's Noose, and they've both done quite well. There's not a lot of overlap between the 2 audiences, but there's enough growth in both of the audiences that led me to need a solution to the cost of managing my audiences.
And I see that you've achieved quite phenomenal results with StoryOrigin. And obviously this video is not about StoryOrigin, but just to set the context for our viewers, how much growth did you get when working with StoryOrigin?
Well, like a lot of people who apply things consistently, I've done very well on StoryOrigin. I started out really with 0, nobody on to begin with. And now I've come very close to about 5,000 subscribers, people who get my newsletter regularly. And it's been a phenomenal site. And I know you've got we did a good interview regarding on how to use it. And I highly recommend any authors starting out wanting to build their email list to go out and get that, because you need to capture those emails and build your audience.
Now, the challenge that we find as authors is that the costs seem to like skyrocket with all of the different publishing costs. You think, oh, book, and people tell you, well, you can get your book onto Amazon for free, and then you think, oh, okay, well, that's wonderful. But there are definite costs besides the cover and the editing, which absolutely are essentials. There's a lot of these little extra costs that come about, and one of them is when your newsletter gets to a certain size. Can you tell us how that's worked out for you, how you manage it?
Of course. Whenever you start collecting people's email addresses, you have to do this in order to get people to receive your newsletter and to communicate with your fan base, to interact with the people who like your work. You have to have some sort of method to capture that. I use a site called Mailchimp. A lot of people use sites like MailerLite and other things like that, but they're all essentially the same. They provide different interfaces, that kind of thing. Now, with all of these sites, they typically will allow you to join for free up until a certain number of subscribers. In Mailchimp's case, the hard limit is 2,000. Now, you may think if you're starting out, oh, that'd be a dream. I'd love to have 2,000 subscribers. And it is nice. You get a lot more people to interact with. They'll give you better reviews. They'll get ready to sign up and buy your books in advance. But once you cross 2,000, Mailchimp will charge you, I believe right now, it's about $20 a month. Now, $20 a month doesn't sound like a lot. However, that is an impact to your sales, and you don't want these small costs to start adding up. I'm a big believer in the cost of free, especially when you're starting out. Having 2,000 subscribers usually is not quite enough to cover all your expenses and another $20 a month. So I was looking for a way to keep the cost free. And that's when I decided to move everything over to a site called Substack.
Okay, I've actually never heard of Substack beforehand. What is the functionality like, and how do you move over? Do you big question. Is StoryOrigin is it even adaptable, or does it accept Substack? What kinds of platforms can you integrate onto StoryOrigin?
Well, StoryOrigin is luckily already integrated with things like Mailchimp, MailerLite. There's a couple more. Can't remember off the top of my head, but there's at least 2 or 3 more of the big ones that are integrated with it. And for the newer writers here, when we say integrated, what we mean is that StoryOrigin will seamlessly capture those email addresses for you, and they're sent over to Mailchimp or MailerLite or anything that's integrated. So if somebody, for example, goes to a page that has your book on it that you can sign up for free, that person signs up and automatically gets their email sent in to that particular site. So Mailchimp will then collect that. Now, Substack has the same exact functionality of Mailchimp, but it is not integrated with StoryOrigin, meaning that there's an additional step that has to be done. So let me talk about that real brief. Substack is actually designed to send out newsletters. That's their business model. It's not so much capturing email so much as trying to get people to sign up for newsletters, which if people like your content, they will then sign up to pay month after month. Now, you as an author, unless you're very famous, good luck in doing that. People sign up to your list not necessarily because they want to pay for your newsletter every month. They're interested in buying your books. And that's what you're going to be focusing on, is getting them to buy books, leave you reviews, and let them interact with you that way. So here's the process I use is I have StoryOrigin, of course, that captures the emails. We have Mailchimp that gets them in their database. And then we have Substack. I create an account on Substack. All right. Now, once a month, what I do is I go into Mailchimp and I simply export the users that I've collected, okay? It's not hard. You can look up the FAQ on Mailchimp or whatever program you use. It'll explain very easily. There's usually a button labeled export. It will export it into a type of file called a .csv file. This is a file that can be opened by, say, Microsoft Excel. Excuse me. A little dry today where we are. All right. Once you export those people, okay, they still count under the number of people you have under Mailchimp. You then need to archive them. Again, I refer you to the help files on the site. Archive those people, which means they're not deleted. They're just saved in a separate database on Mailchimp where they don't count towards that 2,000 total. Now, take that CSV file and import it into Substack. Again, very simple. There's a button that actually says, do you want to import users? Click that button, select that particular file, and it will pull those readers into Substack. After that, it's pretty easy. Once a month, because I do a monthly newsletter, I create a newsletter in Substack the exact same way I do in Mailchimp. Same thing, you type a little text, drag in some pictures, maybe put the links on the pictures so that people can click on a picture of a cover of a book and get a free book. Once you do that, then you're sending out newsletters just like normal, once a month, the way you do it on Mailchimp. There's really no difference. It's completely transparent to the person who signed up. They don't know which service is doing what. You're just doing this behind the scenes once a month, and it allows you to have a literally unlimited number of subscribers, and you will not have to pay $20 or $50 or $75 a month.
Does it have automation in it? So if you have a emails that you want to send out when people are new, or do you use another service for that?
It does not have that automation, but that's why, for example, I've kept the Mailchimp. Mailchimp, for example, does have that automation. What she's referring to, by the way, in case you guys are new, is that a nice bit of automation to have is when somebody signs up for your book, you know, they send Mailchimp and other programs will send an email back to them saying, hey, thank you for signing up for my list. And I think you can play around with it and make sure you put your name in it and you know, show a little bit more of the author personality that you have, saying, thank you for signing up for my epic fantasy list. If you love dragons and knights and all this, stick with me. You're going to love this, and check your email folder. You're going to get my free book. That kind of thing really does matter. It's part of what's called an onboarding. And Substack does not have. However, remember, you're keeping that Mailchimp account for a reason. The sole difference is that every time you move those users out at the end of the month, you never get close to 2,000. And so you get that same service for free.
Another question that I have, which new authors might not really realize in the beginning, is sometimes you have people that sign up, but they never open up your emails ever. It could be that, you know, that you've gone into spam, or it could be that just no longer interested, or whatever the reasons are. But those people that are inactive, that basically counts against you when you are trying to keep your subscribers low. How do you deal with those kinds of newsletter subscribers?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do. Myself, I like to do an audit roughly every 3 months, either in Mailchimp or nowadays in Substack. You can take a look. Any of these email programs will allow you to look at your user base and see, has this person opened the last 3 newsletters you've sent out? Again, remember, I do a monthly newsletter. If I have 0 activity for 3 months, that's a user who may have signed up, may have forgotten about it, maybe have gone to the spam folder or whatever it is. At that point, you archive those folks. I know some authors try to reach out and contact. I think that's a little bit too much work. You're dealing with a few versus 1,000. You've got to spend more time writing. But that's me personally. I prefer to just weed those folks out. Now, as far as them counting towards that 2,000 limit where you could get charged, you bring up a very good point. That'll push you towards that 2,000 hard limit where you get charged for your subscribers very quickly. Of course, when you move into Substack, a little bit less of an issue. I still like to weed it through so I know how many active fans I have, but very definitely you've got to watch for those because that will count towards your limit.
Thanks for that explanation. And just for people who are new authors, explain to them why it is important to actually even have a newsletter. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't need to do that. You know, they're not regular with their newsletters. They consider that they've signed on to the Amazon business model and that's it. All they need to do is write their book and pop it onto the Amazon backside, and then that's all they need to do. Why do we need to have newsletters as authors?
Well, it depends. If you want to grow your audience, then by all means, you need to have a newsletter. Newsletters allow you to interact with people. And remember, people are buying a book from you. Yes, they're buying an experience, but they want to have a sense, oh, I'm part of the in crowd, that I'll know when that next book in that series comes out. And it works both ways. Not only are they going to get more from it, they'll give you more from it. For example, if you have a hardcore list of, say, 100 people who really like your work, and you put your next novel up for pre-sale, they will all sign up for it. You'll get that boost in the rank early. They're more likely to leave reviews. And if I can quote a particular article I read a while back, I can't remember the citation, so bear with me, but essentially it said that if you have 1,000 true fans, then you can be a success in whatever media job or position you have. A true fan is someone who likes your work enough, they'll pretty much buy whatever you put out. Obviously, not all your fans are going to be true fans, but even if you have 1,000 people, you may have 10 or 20 new fans in there that are really true, that'll buy anything you have because they like your work.
It's actually so great when you hear from fans. I mean, my newsletter list is a lot smaller than yours, but the interaction, I know over Christmas, I sent through a newsletter and I said, you know, what are you having for Christmas? I had a lady that sent me her family recipe book. I couldn't believe it. It was so exciting because not that I'm a great cook, but I'm just thinking, wow, those are recipes that her granny and great granny passed down to her. So I actually felt so honored to receive it.
I think that's fantastic. I've seen stuff like that as well. Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten anybody's recipe. That was pretty good. But I think that is pretty good. I've definitely got some good interactions with people. I got an email once from somebody who thanked me for putting together my fantasy series because they spent the time there. I believe their son had gotten into a car accident or something like that, and they were in the hospital with him. And to take the stress off, they spent the next week reading my 10-book fantasy series in the hospital. And they thanked me because it helped get them through a very difficult time. And that's rather meaningful. It actually makes you feel like you've made an impact on the world. And anybody who's a writer wants to feel that.
Yes, I totally agree. For me, one of the big things was because I write medieval fantasy, but I write it with a Christian slant. Then that meant that I have people who said, wow, we actually never realized there was a writer who was actually writing in this space. We've been looking for someone that we can read that writes with that kind of slant, because a lot of Christian people think that if you're writing fantasy, it has to be evil. So that's in the market, which I think is a bit false, but it was nice to hear someone say, wow, I'm actually so glad that I came across, that there's someone who writes like this. So, Michael, I just want to say thank you so much for signing in with us and for sharing a little bit about your experience on how to manage that email list, because it really makes a big difference in an author's life to have a nice, clean email list and to have growth and not have to worry about all of these escalating costs. Now, for people who have listened over here, you'll see in the description, there is a link for you to download a free copy of one of Michael's books. And that's going to do two things for you. It's going to give you exposure to him as an author. And additionally, it's going to let you get a feel for what it's like to sign on from the StoryOrigin side to a newsletter from an author. Michael, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and the concise way that you've explained how to manage the system to us.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure being here.